So, we live in incredibly interesting times, man. This past week has been insane with so much news in the gaming industry. A lot of it surrounding Nintendo, the Switch, of course, Reggie retiring, and what we're going to spend a lot of time talking about today, all of this crazy information about Xbox Gamepass and Project xCloud and just Xbox games in general actually being playable on the Nintendo Switch. So yeah, all of this information is mind-boggling, and it's really tough for me to kind of start processing all of what's going on, but it is definitely fascinating. The nature of this news comes from someone you guys probably know as Direct Feed Games. His name, of course, is Nate. He's a really cool dude, somebody who I've gotten to know through doing the Spawncast a couple of times over the past couple of weeks and months. And he definitely seems to be someone in the know, and he appears to be kind of the source for this information. He made his own couple of minute long video that kind of discusses what's going on and what it is that he's heard. So I'll post that below. You guys should check it out. It's literally like 3 minutes long. So, and so of course it should also be known that nothing here is actually confirmed beyond Nate saying that he knows it to be basically a fact. And so while I tend to trust him, it just should be known that this hasn't been confirmed by any of the official sources, such as Microsoft or Nintendo. So I just want to put that part out there. We're going off of what Nate and a couple of other people have said about what's going on here. So we're talking about all of this Xbox stuff just apparently coming to the Nintendo Switch, and it would allow for a lot of Xbox games and Xbox features such as Xbox Live and achievements and gamer scores, as well as Xbox Gamepass, the biggest piece of news, and also, like I mentioned, what's called Xbox Project xCloud, like a video game streaming service essentially, all running on the Nintendo Switch and other devices. Now, of course, this also comes off the heels of some other information that was floating around about 3 or 4 weeks ago, when it was just initially this rumor about Xbox Live and some of its most base functions coming over to multiple devices, including phones, and also, of course, including the Nintendo Switch. We talked about it here. I made my own video discussing the idea. I thought it was interesting. It was tough for me to overall believe it because it was weird to sort of picture how it would work and what the benefit for both Microsoft and Nintendo could be. But to be fair, at that time, the rumor didn't really mention anything about actually playing physical games on your Nintendo Switch. It was literally, for the most part, like using party chat and achievements for Xbox just popping up when you're playing your Nintendo Switch, which seemed very, very weird at that time. But now all of this new information from Nate and other sources is starting to come out that it also does include Game Pass, and then also some other games that were previously exclusive to the Xbox as well. And then again, the Project xCloud, which means streaming certain games would actually be something available on the Nintendo Switch. I mean, we know the Nintendo Switch isn't necessarily as powerful, obviously, as an Xbox One or a PlayStation 4, so there are the occasional games that might release on those consoles that we would think probably couldn't run on the Switch, at least without an insane amount of work done to them. The idea of the Project xCloud working on the Nintendo Switch through all of this information here is the idea that basically you could just stream a game to the console, and really all the Switch is doing is just displaying the game as opposed to actually running and processing all of the data from the game using all of the components of the Switch. So just like with Resident Evil 7, for example, which we all know was this weird experiment where you could just stream the game, it wasn't actually running natively on the Switch, we might see that with other Xbox games. There's also a really fun part to this rumor where there are two, like I was just hinting at, there are two specific Xbox One exclusive games that seem to be, through this report, coming to the Nintendo Switch as well. Again, not confirmed, but starting to seem pretty likely. And that, of course, is Cuphead and Ori and the Blind Forest. And those two games get me extremely excited. One, because I've never played Cuphead, and I do mean to buy it on my Xbox One, but if it gets a release on the Switch, maybe it's like one of those situations where it's like, well, now I might as well just dive in and actually buy the game. And not because I prefer it on the Switch or not, just because I've passed it up this whole time, and once it gets back in the news cycle, maybe it gives me a reason to pick it up. And then Ori and the Blind Forest, I mean, I don't know what to say, man. That is one of the best games of this generation. Probably my favorite Metroidvania type of game that isn't a Metroid or a Castlevania. I've said that before. So those are two games that I think would make a killing on the Nintendo Switch, and I think that Microsoft and Nintendo both know that. So if that turns out to be true, that's going to be a win for everybody. And if you have not played Ori and the Blind Forest, I demand you either buy it now on your Xbox, or if this becomes true, you better buy it on the Switch because it is that good. And so if we take all of this information together, Cuphead and Ori and the Blind Forest coming to the Switch, Game Pass coming to the Switch, Project xCloud coming to the Switch, what is it that we're looking at? In a weird way, it's almost like the entire Xbox library might suddenly start to become playable on the Switch, including Microsoft first-party games, games developed by Microsoft Studios, and games published by Microsoft. And it's like, this is really, really insane news. Are we literally going to be able to play Halo and Gears of War and Forza on our Nintendo Switches, whether it's because you can just access it through Game Pass or because you're streaming it through Project xCloud? I mean, I don't know, man, but like, worlds are colliding. Again, if any of this even turns out to be true. Worlds are colliding, we're crossing the streams, cats and dogs living together, mass hysteria. It's absolutely the craziest thing I've ever heard. And so, is this a cool thing? I mean, I have to say, yeah, I can't like not like this, because more great games being available to more gamers on more platforms is inherently a good thing, so I'm definitely in support of that. I do think it's also very awkward and strange, though. This is just my own personal opinion here, to be doing something like this and to be meshing the worlds. Like, it might seem silly to a lot of people who might not be able to relate to this, but I've also always enjoyed the fact that there are three distinct console manufacturers, three distinct lines or walls, so to speak, dividing one product from another product from another product. The world of PlayStation is what it is. The world of Nintendo consoles is what it is. The world of Xbox is what it is. And while you'll see multi-platform games released on all those consoles, in general, they're like, you know, uniformed experiences dedicated to each console and what they do well in their strengths. And so once we start to break those barriers down, it's like I'm a little bit emotionally torn, because I think on one hand it's really great and good for everybody, and on another hand it's like I'm kind of old school, and I kind of like the idea of everything being separate for the most part. And I know it seems counterpoint to a lot of people who might say, hey, I can't maybe afford to buy $300-400 consoles, so the more things start to mix together, the more I can play more things with just the purchase of one console. And that is one of the things that I like about this. That's one of the things I support. I mean, I'm someone fortunate enough to be able to not have that problem, no matter how many consoles ever release. Like, I could buy a console if I want to, if it has games and experiences I want. It's not a barrier for me, but it is a barrier for a lot of people, so I don't want to take away from those who maybe live that way. And it's like, I can only afford one console a generation, so, you know, if I can get Uncharted and Zelda and Halo on the same console through all of these things, that's a win for a lot of people who just get to spend less money, and I am definitely in support of that. And I think if we start to discuss more how true this may or may not be, and how much we should maybe put stock in this actually coming true, it's tough to say. Like I said, to me, it's coming from a source that I'm tending to trust and believe. Like, Direct Feed knows what he's talking about. He does have inside sources. You know, like I said, I've definitely spent some time talking with the guy, a really cool guy, and I just think that he's not making stuff up or blowing smoke up our skirts. I think that there's got to be something to this. Not to mention the fact that, you know, Microsoft has been playing nice with Nintendo the last year or two. Like, we've talked about it, I've talked about it, everyone's discussed it on Twitter and seen the news, you know, and we know about, you know, they've been great with crossplay. Them and Nintendo seem to have a great relationship. Minecraft being published on multiple devices and consoles, including the PlayStation and the Switch, you know, and the Wii U. Like, they've obviously been working with publishing games that they own, but allowing them to show up on other consoles. And that's where people have talked about rare games coming over to Nintendo or other consoles. And they've talked about Banjo-Kazooie showing up in Smash Brothers, and it's like, it kind of feels like that's something that could become a reality. Phil Spencer just seems like he's down with all of this stuff. And what's interesting is it seems like Microsoft is maybe trying to change the nature of their platform and their brand. Maybe they're not 100% trying to be their own dedicated home console player and manufacturer in this space. maybe in the next couple of years we see them turn more into an app and a service and kind of stop producing physical hardware. That would be a crazy thing. It would actually make me kind of sad, but it would also be a huge shakeup to the industry. And so coming off of seeing Microsoft play so nice with Nintendo over the last couple of years, coming off of these discussions about Xbox Live just as a base service being available on the Switch and phones and other devices, we then maybe look at this as the next step. Maybe they're really going to dive into this idea and just change what they do and be a completely open platform and just allow all sorts of things to happen on all sorts of devices, including Nintendo and Sony products and all of our cell phones and our tablets and our computers, and it's just going to become something different. This could be a huge game changer for the industry. And like I was saying, we may lose Microsoft as one of the 3 main console players, like in their own dedicated space, as just an Xbox hardware. And that would make me sad because I'm old school and I like the 3 individual players. I go back to even the Sega days when they were relevant and the Atari days when they were relevant. So I would miss that, but there's a lot of pluses that could come out of this as well. So at the end of the day, are we going to be playing Halo? Are we going to be playing as Master Chief on our Nintendo Switches over the course of the next year or whatever? Maybe, man. There really could be something to this. So maybe not. Maybe nothing comes of this and it's not quite what it's being told to us to be, but I'm definitely open to it. And there are some pretty strong sources behind it. So I am very curious to see how this all plays out and what's going to happen. Of course, now I want to hear from you guys. What do you think about what's going on here? Do you believe these stories? Do you not? Do you like the idea of what seems to be reported? Or do you maybe hate the idea? I don't want to say that I'm in the middle. I'm kind of more on the side of like liking and supporting this idea, but I do have that one part of me that's a little bit kind of sad about the idea of breaking down these walls. So I don't know if maybe you rest in the middle kind of as well. I don't know, man. There's just a lot to talk about and a lot to think about here. But it's interesting, it's fascinating, and we're just going to have to wait and see what happens. So, of course, talk about it below. Thanks, of course, as always, for tuning in, guys. This is Rob of Ro2R Review, and I'll catch you next time on another video.